Crowley put her up to the shooting. Crowley also had motives to tarnish the legacy of Carter's discovery, Mr. Bainan argues. He accuses Crowley of being responsible for the deaths of Raoul Loveday, who died on February 16th, 1923. 23-year-old Oxford undergraduate was a follower of Crowley's cult at a Sicilian abbey. He died in the same day at the very hour of Carter's much-publicized opening of Tutenkhamen's burial chamber after drinking the blood of a cat sacrificed in one of Crowley's rituals.
Okay. Poor kitty.
Well, yeah, and Mr. Bainan argues that the cat was poisoned, so the blood was poisoned, and that's why the guy died.
Sure, that makes sense.
He also believes that Crowley was responsible for the death of Aubrey Herbert, who died September 23rd, 1923. Shortly after Marie Marguerite's acquittal, Aubrey Herbert, the half-brother of Lord Carnarvon, died of blood poisoning after a routine dental operation went suspiciously wrong at his private hospital in Park Lane. He had only recently returned from his own trip to Luxor. Mr. Bainan speculates that Crowley was behind the death and may again have used Marie Marguerite to do his dirty work.
Well, you know, if you got somebody who's willing to do your dirty work, you might as well use them.
Right.
That's what I always say.
Now, Captain Bethel, as we said, his body was found dead in his bed at Mayfair's exclusive bath club. It was initially thought he had died of a heart attack, but his symptoms raised suspicion that he was smothered to death as he slept. Crowley had only recently returned to London and was often a guest of W. Somerset Maugham at the Bath Club.
I see. W. Somerset Maugham?
Famous novelist of the time.
Oh, okay. You lost me there for a minute again. I apologize. I'm not as well read as you. We've discussed this.
I know the name. I've never actually read any of his works, unfortunately. Lord Westbury, the guy that supposedly leapt to his death at 77 off the 7th floor at St. Jane's apartment. Mr. Bainan claims it was impossible for the elderly man to have climbed onto the window ledge and suggests that Crowley threw him off. Edgar Steele died February 24th, 1930. Only 4 days after the death of Lord Westbury, Mr. Steele, 57, died at St. Thomas Hospital after a minor stomach operation. Mr. Bainan speculates that Crowley was behind that death. He was in charge of handling the tomb artifacts at London's British Museum. Now, Bainan didn't state how Crowley got away with that one. Sir Ernest Wallace Budge died November 23rd, 1934, a former keeper in the British Museum's Department of Egyptian and Assyrian Antiquities. He was found dead in his bed in Bloomsbury, age 77.
Well, that definitely did. You can see where there would definitely at least be talk.
I can see that. Now, Bainan says there's evidence that Budge and Crowley were associates on the London occult scene. The gods of his own religious philosophy, the Thelema, were mainly drawn from ancient Egyptian religion. He believed himself to be a prophet of a new age of personal liberty controlled by the Egyptian god Horus. It is likely he would have found Carter's excavation sacrilegious, as the historian said.
Mm-hmm.
Crowley never mentions the deaths in his diaries, but often wrote that his mood had lifted like the day after they happened.
I see.
Like he'd been in a bad mood the day before, and the day after these deaths, his mood had lifted.
I see.
Now, something else is that there are people that think Crowley has a connection to Jack the Ripper. Now, I find this hard to believe because, as I said, Crowley was born in 1875. His mother died in 1886. So he was 11 years old at that point. And there are some who believe that right around that time after his mother's death, and remember, he didn't care for his mother very much, but his first sexual conquest was the family maid, whom he bedded in his mother's own bed.
Uh-huh.
Now, supposedly, afterwards, she was fired and eventually became a prostitute and a Ripper victim in London. And Crowley was kind of interested in Jack the Ripper. But he was 13 in 1888, hardly a Ripper suspect. And I think I have a real problem, even at the time, I have a real problem with an 11-year-old making a sexual conquest of a maid who would have been 20s, maybe 30s. Even that time period, I have a real hard time with it.
Yeah. Seems like it's a stretch. But who are we to judge?
I'm not judging. I'm just saying the connection there seems flimsy. Yeah, the guy was obsessed with the Ripper murders, but there's a lot of people in that time who were just because he was never caught. So,
right.
And
it is a little bit. It's a little bit of a coincidence if that truly was the same maid that he slept with that went on and was one of those prostitutes that was killed. That's a pretty big coincidence, though.
It is, and that's just it. I looked for that, of course, and I could not find anybody that fit that bill that was a Ripper victim.
Okay. Well, then, so that's just somebody tying stuff together and making it fit.
Well, a couple of them had been maids, but I think it would stand out if they'd been maids in Warwickshire. And I couldn't find anybody who had. I couldn't even find anybody who came from Warwickshire that was a Ripper victim.
I see.
It just, I don't know, it seems really like an iffy connection to me.
Gotcha.
So that is the story of...
That is where we are going to leave off with this.
Yes, with Aleister Crowley, because Crowley, though, he certainly made a mark on history. Right after he sort of became a thing in the British newspapers, lots of literary Crowleys appeared in fiction, people based on him. And other occultists, sort of fell in love with the guy. He was on the cover of the Beatles album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And his motto of "Do What Thou Wilt" is inscribed on the vinyl of Led Zeppelin's album, Led Zeppelin 3. David Bowie makes a fleeting reference to Crowley in the lyrics of his song Quicksand. It has been suggested the lyrics of Bowie's #1 hit single, Let's Dance, may substantially paraphrase Crowley's 1923 poem, Lyric of Love to Leah. Ozzy Osbourne and his lyricist, Bob Daisley, wrote a song titled Mr. Crowley. And starting in the 1990s, people began to really dissect his life from an academic standpoint, just trying to figure out who he was. Right. So a lot of stuff is starting to come out about him, which is where you're starting to see people go, well, he was a spy. Well, he was this. Well, he was that.
Fair enough.
I honestly think he was born in a time and a place where, he was a bisexual, he was a recreational drug user. Like I said, he died taking more heroin than most people can, and he was living through it. He was doing that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like I said, to quote my buddy Emery, he died hopped up on goofballs seeing Jesus. So
yeah.
I honestly think that Crowley was touched with by madness, and certainly he seemed to understand a little bit of the occult. And so I believe Boleskin House to be haunted, and probably by demons he summoned. But I don't know what else to conjecture beyond that. But he's certainly a spooky figure for the Halloween season.
Definitely.
Krysta?
Huh?
Do you have any thoughts?
Other than the fact that he's...
Okay.
Okay, is he bad because he was a triple timer, or is he bad for other reasons? Or is he bad because he was using drugs, or?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Krista. But maybe.
Did you just call her Krysta Square?
No, I did not call her Krista a square.
You call me that?
Like.
I went like this. I did not draw a square.
Okay.
I
was like, that's a little dated.
No, I wasn't calling our Krista a square. I just love how Krista has such a sensibility about her, about the way romance and love should work. And I'm very proud of her for that. And I hope that she accepts that she takes that forward into her future.
Unless you are polyamorous or have a harem of some sort, you should not be dating someone that doesn't know you're dating someone else.
There you go.
So, but certainly, I think you have to give him that he's one of those figures that, because he was a known bisexual at the time, and having same-sex physical relationships was quite illegal in both England and the U.S.
See, applause to him. It's.
So I have to say he was an early figure in that movement to make that.
See, here's my thing about it. You can be whatever you want to be, as nowadays, male, back then it was illegal, as you said. But, a person can be in the LGBTQ plus community and also be a bad person. So, on which side I'm on here, I'm not sure. He must be. He can be bi. He can be whatever he wants as far as I'm considered. I'm saying that I wouldn't prefer to hang out with him, talk to him, or anything else, just because it's like pulling one good factor through the bad factors. It's like seeing that one good factor and not seeing the rest. That's going to be a toxic thing for you, and you are not going to like it.
I kind of see him as the last romance figure, kind of. And when I say romance, I don't mean like romance, but rather in the Renaissance, like guys like Leonardo da Vinci, who were masters of so many things.
Cyrano.
Right? And who were masters of so many things. They were romance figures. They accomplished all of these things. And I kind of think he took that and he flipped it on its head. And he's kind of the last one to be that accomplished, because he was an accomplished poet, he was an accomplished mountaineer, not to mention an occultist and all these other things he did. I kind of see him as the last Renaissance figure.
And I think you're almost giving him too much credit.
And it's possible. It's possible I am. I came up listening to Ozzy and Led Zeppelin, so I have to admit to a certain amount of fascination with him. Not love, not worship, not adulation, just fascination.
So, am I giving too little, or?
I'm not sure. My whole standing on Crowley is that everybody talks about him because he was one of the first rule breakers. I mean, he came up in a time where society and correctness and politeness, and especially that was what he was raised around. If he was raised in a family of well-means, they didn't go around and do things that you weren't supposed to do. That's not how upper society. Even now, it's still frowned upon. Look at all of the stir that you get when couples in Hollywood break up. The royals have issues. Somebody says somebody's a bad name. Somebody does something that's not politically correct. And that's now. That's now when we live in an age where, breaking the rules is the absolute norm. So for somebody like Crowley, who was interested in darker subjects, who was interested